So we're on the recommendations page. So just to reiterate for the recording, you can either get that on the bell notification at the top right, or you can go onto the left-hand side underneath the overview and select recommendations there. Now, these are recommendations specific to your live advert at this moment in time. So because of obviously the news of Prince Philip, and also because of where we ended the financial year, we want to be a bit more strategic in our paid this year. We've actually paused the majority of our adverts, bar the one that's just around what we do. So the one that we're talking about at the moment is the What We Do advert. And you can see here that it has add new keywords. So you'll be able to learn more about what those keywords would be. So we'll have a look at that in a minute. And with every recommendation, you have a percentage score. So if you implement that recommendation, you basically are looking to increase this optimization score of your advert. So at the moment, we're on 90%. That's a very good optimization score. So obviously, if you were to be in the kind of like the 60s, I would say, oh God, that's not a very good advert. And you definitely want to revisit your key search terms and your messaging and your adverts. So we've got add new keywords here. So don't just go willy-nilly in terms of the apply all, because actually once you look into them, what Google will recommend versus what we actually want people to be searching for can sometimes be different. So you can see here that you've got the NHS health helpline, you've got NHS Direct Online, 111 NHS. But if you look into more of that as well, you can see here that even if you were to do health.uk, a lot of these bizarrely are massage services. So obviously everyone needs a massage post-COVID by the looks of things. That's what people are searching for. I mean, I would love one personally, but obviously that's not what we want for our traffic because we haven't got that information. Now, what I did think, though, when I was looking at this earlier, which might just become something to kind of bring in a little bit more to our advice and information structure, is that these search terms around NHS Healthline, NHS Patient Access, 111 NHS, I did wonder whether actually we could formulate an advice piece on different ways to contact your NHS service. It's really basic information, but clearly people are trying to search for that. So that might be something that when we did have that, information and space on our website, we might want to add those key terms in because we can obviously offer people the answers to the questions that they're looking for. I personally wouldn't just try to get your click-throughs over, because obviously if your people are trying to search for a term, then which you're encouraging them to click to your website and you haven't got that answer, then it's kind of a bit of a negative relationship that you're forming with people. So I would just, think about it before you click apply with all of your search terms. If you go down, there's other recommendations. So setting a key CPA. I'm not actually sure what this is. So but obviously I can see here that it's a plus 8% increase. So what I would do is have a look at view the recommendation, find out a bit more information about what that is, and then see how I can apply that to my adverts. Naturally, as always with any digital thing, the key terms and the different features of Google Ads will change. So don't be afraid, like with this one where I'm kind of like, oh, I haven't seen that recommendation before. That wasn't there last time I optimized my ad. That's fine. It just means that you've sorted out your basics, and now it's like almost optimizing you for the next level of your advert. So you can never really get it 100%, I don't think. But obviously, prove me wrong. We've got one here which is about audiences. So it's pulled out the audience of avid local newsreaders, which I thought was quite an interesting one, because actually that's an audience that Google has pulled together based on its statistics, its analytics that they've got on the back end. So it would be useful for us to view that recommendation and see what's behind it. So I'm going to do that now just to show you. View recommendation, add. Oh, it doesn't really give you much information around that. So obviously it literally is what it says on the tin by the looks of it, because it hasn't given you any more detailed information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press apply, and you can see there that you've got 90%. So if I press apply, add audiences, that recommendation has now gone up. You're now at 91% as an optimization score, which is good. So that's kind of the recommendation. So I kind of jumped ahead away from the focus on creating a campaign and just, started with actually, before you do anything, check your existing ones that they're running, check the optimization score, see if there's any improvements that you can make, because obviously that learning that you do there will help you formulate your next lot of adverts. So I do think that's really important. Now, going to the actual campaigns themselves. I will show you these. So this is the landing page, and this, when they say campaigns, you know, it's just the adverts that are running at the time. But you can see that there's a long list of stuff where there's been different tests that have happened, blah, blah, blah. Now, in terms of reporting, you'll want to have a look at these headings. So I'll come on to budget in a bit more detail when we go through the setting up of the campaign. But budget basically means you set per day what you want to do with your advert. Now, quite a lot of the time, the recommendations will be like, you know, do an unlimited budget, so you're not constrained by it, which is all well and good if we're a company that has, you know, a ridiculous amount of money. But quite often we want to make sure that actually starting off with smaller budgets, we want to see if it's working, and then we can obviously increase that if that's what we need to do. Obviously, Sarah, you're kind of the management of the digital budget, so it's kind of looking at, I would imagine that whenever we're doing adverts, just kind of checking in with Sarah to be like, well, actually, what's the budget for Google Ads this year, this month even, sorry. So that you can kind of use that to navigate your budget. And obviously it depends on how many ads you're running at a time as well. So you can see that this is one that's running at the moment. You've got your optimization score that's been pulled through. You then want to report on things like your impressions. So this is, you know, the number of people that are seeing your advert within the period of time. So we've got custom here, which is actually going, if you look at the dates that have been set, that's just the previous year. Obviously this ad is actually, that hasn't been over a whole year. So if I change this date, I'm sure that it will still be reflective. So if I think I started this from, say, beginning of this year. So, oh, weirdly, why has that gone up like that? Anyway, so I've just changed it. Oh, it's because I added dates on post. It was up to the 21st, that's why. So I've now just done it for the last 3 months of this year. So that's when we've been running the ad for. It might have started from January, but I'm faffing around with it now. So you're looking at your impressions, your interactions. So this is the amount of people that have actually clicked through. And then your interaction rate. So you can see it's a huge percentage there of engagement. So you've got 7.8%. So just to kind of put that into context, our engagement for like our Facebook at the moment is like 3%. So obviously this is a lot more targeted way in terms of what people are searching for, because think about it in the sense that Facebook is putting information in front of people's eyes that weren't looking for it, whereas Google is putting things in front of people's eyes that actually are searching for it. So that's would explain that why the interaction rate is so much higher. In turn, that obviously brings your cost down. And then in terms of conversion, I'm not massively convinced over here in terms of what this means, because we haven't really, you know, in terms of on page what we do page, and that's counting as a conversion. But time we will really conversion rate because can't actually submit a view sample.
Sorry,
when I have
you went sort of mental there.
Okay.
So basically, because conversions, we don't have like an ROI on how much a click is worth to us. Is that basically saying we've had 1,700 clicks because they're the conversions?
So we have clicked. We've had the interactions. That's the that's the amount of people that have clicked on your actual advert, and then I'm taking conversions. What I believe, and I think I did ask this to Google Ads, so it's not based on nothing. Is actually people that have then clicked on that page on a different link. So you know, whether you're extending from the What We Do page to go and find out some more information. For us, conversions in the sense of these Google ads aren't that important, because we're not directing people to convert in the sense of submitting a form, you know, and sharing their experience, because those kind of adverts actually don't seem to be doing very well for Google ads, because naturally people are searching to find information right on Google rather than to share their experience. So that's why, in the sense of Google, I think actually on that page, but in terms of reporting, I think that the Google ad is working is whether people are clicking through, because that means that our message is aligned with what people search terms. That's what we're kind of interested in here, if that makes sense.
We're more interested in the interaction rate and the cost per click rather than conversion and conversion, cost per conversion.
Yes, exactly. And if you did want to do tests, in the future to just try out, as I said in the Facebook one, like what works one year might change another year. So it might be around that people are actually quite so tell someone about my experience, maybe that might be something to test, in which case then you'd look at conversions. But for the majority of what we do on Google, it's more about surfacing our advice information piece and what we are as an organization to get in making sure that people are finding the answers to their questions. You in terms of reporting. So just a really easy way to keep track is literally if you just scroll down past all of the advert date at the top to see how much money you've actually spent. Now the cost of Google is variable, so obviously just because you've put a budget of £6 a day doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you're going to spend, because it's kind of reliant on competing adverts. It's reliant on if the amount of people that are searching for those kind of terms. So if it might be less or it might be slightly more, depending on the success of it, but essentially. So it's just worth keeping an eye on and revisiting, just to make sure that if you are kind of particularly towards the end of the financial year, that might be something where you put your efforts into Facebook, because you can have more control over the spend rather than on Google. But anyway, just something to be aware of.
Perfect.
If I were then to click onto a specific advert, so I'm going to go to what we do. That's going to pull up so you can focus and just see purely what that actually is. If I click through one more, you if you click through again, you can see the keywords that have been used for your ad. So this is who are Healthwatch. What is Healthwatch? They're performing quite well, so you can see that the status is eligible. Whereas if you go onto one like this, where it's been flagged as red as a low search volume, you can make the decision to actually say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that keyword, because it's not actually benefiting my ad whatsoever, but I might be spending money on that for no reason. So I'm going to remove it, confirm, and it will take off your advert. I don't know why it's not doing it, but oh, there you go. It's just this very slow search. So it's worth kind of revisiting your keywords, and naturally from the recommendations that will add keywords in, depending on what people are searching for. So it's worth noting when you do tap into a campaign, and if I were to then go overview, I now do an overview of what that specific campaign and how that's performing. It's actually very annoying sometimes. Sometimes it can be really good, but sometimes it can't be. But I have literally been like, okay, well, I'm lost now. How do I get back to my original? And it's literally a case of going back up to the top here and just selecting all campaigns. And then everything that you press now will be an overview of everything. So just to kind of repeat that, to have a look at one campaign, once you've clicked through, you'll notice that this change here to the navigation is going to go all campaigns, what we do, and then you've gone more specifically into that one advert, which will dictate anything that's showed on the things on the left hand side. But to go back, it's all campaigns, and that will give you an overview of everything. Okay, so I've clicked on here, and now I want to have a look at my adverts. So if I go, okay, it's not dropping down for me. Okay, so I can see here if I go to ads and extensions and then go extensions, then I can kind of see what my adverts are looking for. So I can see my preview. I can see what my 4 extensions are. So these are set up for you to add on really easily, which I'll show you when we come to creating it. I've done it a bit backwards because I just think it's really worth just understanding how it works first. And basically these are site links, extensions, sorry. So local Healthwatch, what we do, advice, information, share your views. And the importance of adding these on are for a couple of reasons. One, it extends the journey of people. But 2, what it actually does is, as you can see here, it makes your advert a lot bigger on Google. So when people are looking at you, you can either go, and if you have a look at other people, so like say here, Healthwatch UK, which obviously is a different organisation, so the UK charity, theirs isn't very big. They haven't got any extensions, whereas we're kind of a bit more in your face because we've got our site extensions. So that's just worth kind of knowing the importance of that. And obviously you're also appealing to different needs of people that might not know about you. So the fact that you can promote your local health watch, what you do, but you can also promote your advice function or sharing your views function. Yes, Seema.
In terms of the extensions, can you actually track and see which ones are working well and kind of tailor those depending on stats?
I was going to say I don't know, but actually yes. So if you have a look, here you've got the site linking extension, and then you can see how many people have clicked on them as well over time. So this isn't reflective of this one advert because these site extensions are used for all of them. But obviously you can see there that there are kind of almost like equal clicks really on what we've got, which is good because they're kind of our core business areas. So that's a good thing to kind of keep note on, but it's not something that I've reported on until now.
Okay.
Sorry, Q tractor. That can't have been a tractor, it was too fast. So yeah, that's that really. Audiences, I haven't really done anything on audiences, but you can go delve deeper into kind of people that are reacting to you based on that information that's on the front page. It kind of just gives a bit more depth to that. Unsurprisingly, our lowest cost is going to be towards that middle-aged group. Similar to Facebook, we can't see anything about ethnicity, but you can do targets for location if you wanted to. Again, unsurprisingly, females at the top. Household income, it's not something I've ever really looked at before. And it has got some basic stats, as you can see, so it might just be worth delving into these a little bit more later, particularly if that's kind of the way that we're going with some of our campaigns. But I wouldn't really worry about this feature too much. So I think that's everything in terms of like the back end that I wanted to show you in terms of that, trying to get some understanding about what we're looking for with Google Ads. Does everyone feel a bit more clear on that than before I started talking? Or have any questions?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Cool.
Laura, do you run Facebook ads for like every campaign, or how do you prioritize like which one to invest more in?
Sorry, do you mean Facebook or Google?
Sorry, Google campaigns.
So Google tends to be around kind of business needs. So it tends to be more the always on marketing that I use Google for. So that'll be kind of a continuous one about what we do. It might be our advice and information. And in terms of if I'm picking out specific advice and information pieces, that will be dictated more from the Google Analytics. So what are people looking for, or even what are people not viewing? So it might be to do a couple of tests. So for example, I know that the NHS dentistry one has performed really well, obviously, and people were looking for that, so I put some money behind it. But actually what I then did was I took away some money to see if actually it had any implication on people viewing that. And now because the question and the keywords that people are searching for are so good in our article, in the sense that it's got really strong SEO, actually that was getting enough organic traffic anyway. So I took the money away and actually haven't noticed a dip of that. So what I've then done is then put some money behind something like getting the most out of virtual appointments, to use Google as a way of putting that up in terms of the ranks on Google, to generate views towards that page instead. So that's kind of how I use it. And if we are kind of pushing a campaign and we've got a relevant advice piece, then I would use that as the advice piece is what I would put my Google ad behind, just to kind of boost that kind of view, because it would make sense to do that kind of more concurrent with the rest of our messaging. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it means like they don't need to run in like they don't need to be coordinated with our campaigns, comms campaigns and Facebook.
But it would be more that if you have an advice piece, which I know we're looking to do more of in our campaign, or has been raised as something that we'd like to do more of in our campaigns, in terms of relevant advice piece towards that target audience or that group, and we're doing that in our social channels, that would be an area where I think actually we could include Google into the mix a bit more with our campaigns, because we want to use it to bring more people over to that advice piece that we've produced alongside that campaign. And then on that advice piece, we could then obviously have, a share your views. So it might have an effect that way. So it wouldn't be a core thing, but it will just be supportive of the campaign.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Sarah, did you say anything?
Sorry, you went in and out. I think as well, one of the things that we can look to do, so if we think basically Google Ads have to help with what people are Googling, and realistically people are not going to be Googling the most of the time are new reports or bits of insight, but they might be Googling things like, if you remember the I mean, they wouldn't be Googling NHS long-term plan, for example, but they might, if there was some really big either sort of scandal or wide-scale change where they want to find out a bit more about something or provide something in a bit more basic language, which I imagine we probably would do either news items on or, you know, a bit more in-depth project work on. So it might be something like that we would do, or that we could try. But I think we just basically need to make always be thinking of what are people searching for.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a case of building, and it's a really good way to build, and as I said before, like a cheap way, but it's also just that kind of fine balance between what people are achieving in an organic sense anyway, and then what people are what you're adding to with Google. I think from the test that we've done before over the last couple of years since I introduced it, was basically the advice pieces are the better ones to push. But I would, as always, just do a couple of tests, and if you have got I think what would be an interesting one, which we haven't done before, is if we've got a strong media story, for example, and actually we want to kind of promote that in Google to up the rankings, maybe, so that we're known as the source of that story almost. That might be an interesting test to do, so that, yeah, we kind of position ourselves as like, yes, we're the leader of the story, but here's like, you can actually go to the source of it. That might be an interesting one, which we obviously haven't done before. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is take you through how to make one. I will stress that it's a trial and error situation with Google. Do as it is with Facebook ads, don't worry too much if you're kind of not getting it straight away. What I will try and do, the same as I did with the Facebook one, is to try and do like some screen grabs of like the different stages as you go, because I know that, again, people learn in different ways, but the most easy way to do it is by doing. So to add a campaign, I'm going to go to this. So I'm just making sure that at the top it says all campaigns. I've gone to campaigns, and now I'm pressing that blue button with the plus, and I'm saying new campaign. If anyone wants to get a cup of tea, that would be fine. There we go. So we want to select the goal. Again, just very similar to the approach of Facebook, where we're setting the goal ahead right at the start of the campaign. So what do we want to achieve? Do we want to achieve brand awareness? Do we want to achieve leads or website traffic? Now, most of these, remember, are going to be for sales purposes. So, think about products when you're searching on Google and you get spammed at the top with a load of different sales messages. What we want to do is quite often website traffic, because we want to take people to our advice and information, for example. Now select campaign type. So I'm just going to do a normal search ad. So you may have seen before that there's like display ads as well. So display ads tend to be a bit more attractive. So you've got pictures and images on there as well, which are pulled through from your website. Whereas search terms are kind of search ads are those ones right at the top, which kind of don't really have that many images. Quite often, which is really, really handy actually, is Google will try and contact you to try and optimize your ads, and they'll take you through the different stages to improve. And I have to say that that's where I've got a lot of the improvement from, is talking to them and just listening to their advice and following through the processes, especially because this is not something that we do as frequently, not something that I do as frequently as Facebook. So obviously getting used to the platform and how it changes, it's quite nice to have that person on the other end of the phone to actually guide you. So if you do come around to it and you want to reach out to the Google team, I would absolutely encourage you to do so. They are very helpful. So I've got search here, and then obviously we want to have our business website. So I'm going to just search that. and press continue. So we want to name our campaign. So for the purposes of this, I'm going to put test. So search network and display network. So this will help you. So basically, you've got the option to have that search one that we just selected, which is our core purpose. That's kind of like a sideline. You can also get that display one in there. Now, I'm not really convinced about this because I think that sometimes it's a way to get extra money. So I'm actually going to deselect it because that's our core purpose, is the search network. When Google do talk to you, go through the process, but make sure you go back and just check your ads. So just have a look against your core search network ad and then your display ad, and just make sure that actually the display ad is being efficient, and if not, just turn it back off again. But for now, I'm just going to do a search network ad. So we get location, which is obviously super handy because we don't want to have everybody, we just want to have England. The same with Facebook. You can kind of go down a bit more granular if you want to. So if I just put Birmingham, my hometown, I can pop in here, target, exclude, or put nearby. So again, thinking about how we want to reach different people a bit more targeted ways this year. You can also do that with Google, but because our advice that we tend to promote is applicable to everyone, that's why I tend to do England. But obviously you can have a bit of a play around and see whether that's depending on the advice pieces that we're publishing this year. So I've got England for now, but obviously I can add, exclude different locations if I want to. Moving down, you've got your target, so whether people are in or regularly in or showed interest in your targeted locations. Now, I always say that our people are in or regularly in rather than people searching for, because obviously we kind of want to target people that are experiencing the health and care services in that area on a regular basis. And you can exclude people, but obviously we haven't done that, so that's fine. Languages, it's always going to be set to English. Audiences. Now, this is something you can play around with if you want to. I tend to do general just because I haven't had time to kind of really look into this a lot further. But there are different audiences that you can create. I would imagine in a similar way, but not quite as in depth as how Facebook does it. But as you can see here, you kind of got healthcare education. So you might want people that are interested in that if you were trying to go for maybe professional, like, and I don't really know. Yeah, I guess like nurses, that kind of thing, if you wanted to, if the piece was specific to them. Obviously, if you highlight over it, you can see additional insights. Yep, there you go. So you have to hover over the actual audience itself of how many impressions that might get. But I wouldn't really hang on tight too much to those because, again, it's not quite as efficient, I don't think, as the Facebook ones. In my experience, it tends to be down to a lot more different elements of the advert that dictate that, really. So I'm just going to take that off. But again, just kind of showing you that you can fine tune if you want to. For example, if it's maternal mental health, you could maybe target towards parents of younger children. So targeting, that would be if you have got a targeted audience campaign, but obviously ours is just going to be selected as the recommended observation one, which we're not narrowing that by audience because we haven't selected any. Budget, average you want to spend each day. So if I put in, say, like £5 a day, just bear in mind that it's quite a lot of money, £5 a day, when you add it up. So just make sure that, again, that you've checked your budget and that you're actually maximizing that potential. It might just be that you want to just have a presence on Google, so you might want to just put it down to a couple of £1 a day. But obviously, if you want to really kind of give a bit more weight to a piece over, you might want to increase that budget. What do I want to focus on? Conversions or clicks? So I would always say clicks because, as we said before, that's really what we're looking at with our types of ads. We're not looking for conversions because we're not actually using Google to get our experiences shared. You can actually select a maximum cost per click bid, but we haven't really got the analytics to really support this. When you're on the phone with Google, they might send you a recommended amount. So, for example, we might want to say, actually, we don't want to spend any more than 30 pence on a click, because actually either from Google's advice or actually we've had some time to have a look on what our average is, and we don't want to go above that. and that's where that could come into play, but I'm going to take that off for now. Don't need to worry about those. Moving down, so this is where you've got site extensions, so you can select them from this list that I've already created. You can add new ones, so if I haven't got one here that you think, or you want to make your own or edit, feel free to. I've basically covered the core business needs that we've got, so advice, information, our contact us, Healthwatch news, blah blah blah. So depending on what the advert purpose is, so for example, if it's going to be an advice information piece on GPs, you might want to just highlight your general advice information. You might want to point people to these kind of things, but it does recommend that you do at least 2. Call out extensions, so these ones are a little bit smaller, so they're the very, if I go onto the Google ad again, so you've got these like really small ones in here as well, where it's kind of just general, what's it called, just lines, so it's not as large than these pictures down the bottom. I think that's the difference between the two. I'm not entirely convinced, but they seem to work, so I've just kept them there, to be honest. We've obviously got a literal call extension where you can add a phone number to your ad. You'll always get that pretty much through as a recommendation, but naturally for us, we don't have that, so I don't really encourage it. Although team, actually think about it with your work for obviously the customer journey, it might be something where actually you do, this could be something to look at in terms of, do people want to contact you via phone, and we could put the CQC one and monitor that, but
yeah, that's a good idea.
That could be something. Save and continue. So setting up your ad groups. So you will hopefully, and I can't stress this enough, know what you're advertising before you come to this point, because you should already have it in your mind. So if I go to Healthwatch, and then I'm just going to pick a random advice piece. Do NA. So something else to flag around terms. So the same as Facebook, Google will restrict you in terms of certain topics to advertise. Now, coronavirus is one of them. The vaccinations is one of them. I have raised with Google to be like, can you actually look into us on a bit more of a bespoke basis, because we are a legit organisation that's pushing advice in these relevant areas. But obviously there's a lot of information out there, such as fake news, fake advice, misleading advice. So they've kind of put blockers on that generalised content. And actually, you know, so it's people are getting information from trusted sources. So you'll see that if you have a look at my campaigns, I've got one set up for vaccinations, but there's no actual stats that are being reported against it, because it's not gone through Google's checks yet, and they've basically stopped it. But like I say, I have raised that one, so we'll see where we get with that. So if I change that to be the actual advice piece that I'm referring to, and update keywords. Yes, replace. You'll see that it brings keywords that are actually very specific to your advice piece, which is really handy. Let me just change this to test. So just remembering to copy and paste your where your landing page is going to be. Re-click that update keywords, and you'll see that they've changed. You might want to just go through these and basically just be like, this is applicable to us, this is not applicable to us, and yeah, you can just add and take those out. You can also use this key at the bottom, which basically says broad match, a phrase match, or an exact match. Now it's up to you what you want to do with these. These are all originally broad matches, which basically means that Google will kind of pick anything within these search terms in any order when people are searching for them, and potentially put your advert in front of people. Now, if you was to have something more specific, so maybe a question of where is my nearest A&E, and you know that that's kind of a likely question that people are going to ask, you might want to have a phrase match in there, or even go as far as to say exact match. So depending on your topic, you might want to just explore and test different ways of putting those keywords in. The higher scale that you put them in terms of exact match, phrase match, the more likely Google's going to register your ad to connect to that person that's doing the search terms. But obviously you don't want to limit yourself too much and put them all as, you know, exact matches, for example, because God knows what people search on Google. There's a lot of spelling errors, etc., etc. So just be careful with what you're doing there. Similar to Facebook, you've got your daily estimates here. So if I included all of these on my budget of £5 a day, I'm expected to get 32 click through to my advert a day, which is going to be an average cost of 16 pence per click. I would always recommend that on the basis of, I haven't done this, but I think it's useful to do this, to have a benchmark of what you're currently getting click-wise for the advice piece that you're doing over the recent week or last 2 weeks, for example, just so that you can then, when it comes around to assessing it, actually see if you've made a proper difference there. 7, continue. You can have different ad groups. So, so you got here, this one even has said that not all healthcare related content can be advertised. So we want to either request an exception for some of it, or we just want to actually just remove that. So if it's going to be a case of that one, we'll just get rid of it. Where are we? NHS Online Doctor. Can't even see it. Boom. Bye. Please go through. Ta-da. Okay. So now we're actually on to the bit of creating our ads. So we've got our keywords, we've established our audience, our location, etc. And now we're going to do the ad. Now, it will always suggest that you have 2 or 3 ads. Naturally, it's going to be on timing about whether you can produce that or not. But essentially, what you would try and achieve by a couple of ads is they will basically do A/B testing. Well, the most successful ad they will put to the top of people's pages after they've done kind of a bit of a learning phase. So things you might want to test are, you know, questions that people are asking. You might want to change that in your headline. You might want to change the text underneath, which provides a bit more context for better react to. So that's just a point there. So your final URL, obviously it keeps coming up with this Health Watch one because that's what I put in right at the very start, just as an example, but I'm going to change that to advice. In our display URL, it's up to you whether you want to keep this as is, but quite often it will automatically, you can change it so what it appears like as opposed to that massive long URL that we have are going to be 2 different things. So it just depends on what you want to do there. Otherwise, you can just keep it as healthwatch.co.uk, which, if you remember from Facebook, is what I did there. So it actually suggested to include right in your article, not in your article, in your advert, basically in relation to your advert and the keywords that you've suggested, but in relation to what people are actually searching for. For example, want to say NHS 111 online, perhaps. Oh, that's changed. Classic. So if we just do this instead. I hope you'll be able to see my preview in the, what are you doing? Why do you keep doing this to me? I know, I think it's just been really slow. So in your and it will show you this on the right hand side, and you can see it keeps flicking and changing. It's just taken a while to upload because my computer, because I have selected a priority of any of the headlines that you've suggested. So for example, if I wanted to start this particular advert always with NHS 111 on, I will show this only in position 1, in which case it will have and rotate the next 2 headlines, but my NHS 111 online will always stay. I hope that makes sense. So if I just do this, advice and information, Google has a choice of those other headlines, but they will always have NHS 111 online at the top. You can add new headlines, you can do as many as you want. Now, if you go down below, it's the same thing. So you've got a bit of text here to show some context, and you'll see that that keeps chopping and changing as well because you haven't selected an order. You shouldn't really need to be honest, but obviously it would be important if your sentences actually rely on each other to make sense in a particular order. You would really need to make sure that you're pinning that into description positions. So it pulls through things naturally. I will always say to check, because it's always going to pull it through with capital letters at the start, which really bugs me because that's obviously just not our brand. So we want to make sure that if we're happy with what they pulled through, fantastic. But actually what we want to do is make sure that it's changed to be on brand. Double check what the messages are, making sure that's consistent with what we want people to understand. And then we're done. So that's essentially what your advert is going to look like from a search term point of view. You will have different previews depending on the different orders, so you can click through there. Obviously it will change depending on if you're on mobile or if you're on desktop, which you can change. My computer obviously isn't going to do that though. There you go, so that's online. That's on a desktop, sorry. And then if I press done, you can see like a little preview of the ad there, and then obviously add new ads. Just remembering that you have got your site extensions all added in, so you'll get that longer, bulkier ad displayed on Google, but this is obviously the bit that you've kind of had a bit more scope to change depending on your content that you're trying to promote. And then you will save and continue. And then you're in review. Wonderful. And you can publish it. So that's literally it. Like I say, it looks a bit rank as a system, I think, compared to Facebook, which is a bit more user friendly. But that's kind of how you would set up an ad. Any questions?
Quick question for the cost. So on Facebook, you can set full limits. On this, there's obviously an estimate per day. Is there? I'm pretty sure. I can't remember whether it's Facebook or Google where I get emails when we've spent up to our budget and then it caps it. Is that Google?
Yeah. So well, it's a bit of both, I think. I think it's Google ones that come through. So Google basically won't spend more than you've budgeted within. So if you've kind of overall in a month, you won't more than say 5 times 30. You won't spend any more than that over a month, but you might spend it sooner depending on your people's click-throughs and stuff.
So you can basically have as many ads as running as you want with various daily estimates, but ultimately you could just either hit your monthly budget earlier and therefore then not run the ads for the rest of the month, or you might find that if you've only got a couple of ads running, you don't actually hit your monthly max budget.
So your monthly is dependent on your whatever budget you've selected for your specific advert though, I think. So there might be some place and tools and settings where you can do like a general, do not spend over £500 a month. But in terms of where Google per ad, it will be like if you've put £5 for that one advert and then you've put £3 for another advert, it will just spend on a monthly 5 times 30 and 3 times 30, and that's kind of how I think it works.
Okay, fair. To be honest, Facebook is the one where we've got a max budget, so I get emails when all of the things have hit for the max.
Well, I think with the Facebook one, it's more the credit card that does that. So the credit card reaches a certain budget before we then get billed, because we've set it to kind of just keep an eye on that. So it's not Facebook will stop spending, it's just that we're either billed on a monthly basis or before it hits 750, so that we're able to kind of see, okay, well, we spent quite a lot on Facebook this month. Obviously in some instances we'll need to, because we've got a really big campaign running. And so that's kind of the difference with that. It's not they won't stop spending, it's just that it bills you sooner, so that you can just be like, hello, you're spending a lot of money this month.
So even when we get the notifications for the Facebook ones, that's when we need to say, okay, let's have a look and turn some things off then, because we've reached the credit card limit.
Yeah, but in terms of credit card limit, it hasn't reached the credit card limit, just what we've set it to be to give us a trigger.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Any other questions from people?
No,
was that helpful or was it more confusing?
I think Google Ads, to be honest, is really confusing. But I think it's the sort of thing that when it is helpful to go through in terms of looking at, I think it's important that people understand that there is all this stuff happening, and that they're, that is a massive contributor factor to the driving traffic to our site, because everyone will probably have to be pulling reports on our analytics at some point, and the paid search is a key channel now. It's we didn't have it as a driving channel at all a couple of years ago, and now it's becoming a larger and larger piece of the puzzle which gets people to our sites. And I think that I think it's important that people understand how things are set up, and even if it's just, there's an ad running which we need to pull, knowing that how to go into there and turn things on and off, or understanding what sort of things they might need to think about. So for example, like Flora, if there's a big campaign that we're running, and maybe we do have an advice and information piece, you might then be thinking about, okay, well, here's a bit of content that we've worked on, here's some suggested keywords that we could use for the advertising. So it's might not necessarily be the actual doing of it, but I think it's really useful for people to get an understanding of how all of it works together.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's also the fact that these things also take time, and obviously if you're not familiar with the process, it's like, oh, I'll just whack up a Google ad. It's not the case of whacking up a Google ad. There's actually quite a lot to it. Even in that demonstration just then, that's taken us half an hour to go through really, but it will probably take you longer for your first one, because I didn't even go through actually making an advert and fine-tuning it. So it's just worth kind of just factoring that into your time as well. And yeah, just part of I guess visibility of day-to-day really.
Yeah.
Mal, you've got your thing off. Did you want to say something, or did you just unmute yourself?
No, I was just going to say thanks. That was really, really helpful. And like Sarah said, it's just really good to be able to kind of go through and see what has to be done. But yeah, definitely, I think once we actively put an ad on, when you actually go and do something, it makes it much more it kind of sinks in a bit better.
Yeah, and I think just as a channel, we have improved it over the last couple of years, but there is, as with everything that we do, there's just so much more that you can do with it. And we've got some tests that we've already done, which, similar to the Because We All Care campaign, I'm going to go back through and just kind of remind myself what I've done until this point, so that we've got something to move forward, so it doesn't get lost. And then obviously it's just about building that, retesting some bits, and then I think that as part of if we are doing advice information as part of a campaign, it could become a bit part and parcel of that kind of overall package, which could be quite good.
Laura, does the system store previous ads? So for example, in MailChimp, you can see previous campaigns.
Yeah. So if you just go onto the all campaigns bit and scroll down, what I've tried to do to help manage that